Joining me today for Talking Cannabis.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for having me. It's always great to see you.
It's great to see you too. So, what have you been doing? I read the article in Forbes that you were featured in about cannabis tourism here in Northern California, and I definitely wanted to ask you a bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been up to a lot in the past 5 years. I know you remember when I first started this company, it was kind of like a dream, and with really little direction, just trying to figure out what worked. And now we're 5 years into this, and it seems like we've touched on and we've touched on something here that's pretty big and has grown into, inadvertently here, uh, you know, grown into something that we're really proud of, and we're really happy that it has come this far.
Absolutely incredible. When you first told me you're going to start doing tours of farms, I was a little apprehensive to say the least, thinking, really, people are going to want to do that? But a lot of people have wanted to do that. You're kind of turning it into a new wine industry up here.
Yeah, totally. I like that. Sometimes it's tough to be compared to the wine industry in many regards, but in the same way, it is very much what we are doing at its core. We're providing insight into the process. We're bringing you basically closer to the farm and closer to the farmer than you've ever been able to get before. And I think for a lot of people, pulling back this green curtain, if you will, on the Emerald Triangle allows people who really love cannabis to get even closer to it and even more intimate with it.
Yeah, better understand the where it's coming from and the source of it. And the Emerald Triangle and Humboldt County specifically has been legendary for decades. And to have that open up to people who are essentially outsiders, letting them fly in, jump on buses, and go enjoy the hospitality of local farms is very much like what happened with the wine industry after Prohibition ended. And I think that the culture around cannabis in many ways is the new commodity, and I think you're doing a great job with that.
Oh, I appreciate that. And we didn't take that very lightly. I mean, even in the very earliest stages of the company, I worked with folks like Tim Blake, from the Emerald Cup. I worked with folks all throughout Mendocino. We went up into Humboldt. We talked to a lot of local politicians, a lot of local farmers, we asked for everyone's blessing to do this. And we got everyone's story along the way. And it was a great way to kind of kick off the company because it allowed us to really put our hearts in the center of what we were doing and not really understand the true story. A lot of the pushback I got early on from folks in the deeper parts of Humboldt County and the Emerald Triangle were, this is not your story to tell. That's what they would tell me.
Wow.
And I would be a little bit offended, but I'd have to realize that, look, we're doing something very delicate here. We're pulling back this curtain. We're opening this door to a world that's been intentionally and by design clandestine and hidden away for so long that it's going to feel a little uncomfortable. And so how do we do this safely? How do we do this with the folks in mind who were really the pioneers of this tradition? It's super important to remember when you're a tour operator going into somebody else's world that you're respectful and adherent to their rules and their cultures and their ways of life. Because look, you're 4 or 5 hours north of San Francisco, but this ain't San Francisco anymore. You know what I mean?
It
Uh,
changes incredibly when you get
yeah,
a couple hours north of the bay.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
So it was a big, a lot of stonewalling, a lot of no's. A lot of times I got the door shut in my face very early on, but I persisted and I tried to get and earn everybody's trust throughout the process. Look, a lot of times I lost a lot of money early on because I was trying to prove myself to a community that was wary of what I was doing.
Oh, dude, proof of concept. Even when you first told me you wanted to start doing tours, I was thinking that's really weird. You're going to have issues all over the place. I wasn't sure how much, farms would want to have people just coming in and going out and knowing the layout of their property and things like that. But I think times are changing. And that is one of the things that I believe cannabis tourism is proving. I'm somebody that started going to Amsterdam for the Cannabis Cup in 1994.
Yeah.
And it was like visiting the future to come from a prohibition state. and go to a coffee shop where you could just meet various travelers and sit down and openly smoke a joint with people you've never met before. It was night and day different from what I was dealing with in America. And now I feel like that's what's happening to a lot of people that are coming. Are you seeing mostly domestic visitors or people coming in internationally?
It's a lot. There's been a big change in my customer base very early on. And this sounds weird to say it, but very early on, my customers were the savvy foreign customers, right? They were your high value, high net worth foreign investment groups, your high
Sure.
net worth Thai business people, people in Japan that had no access to cannabis in their world. Like I was getting a lot of foreign visitors, and then coronavirus happened and really stopped the foreign
International travel
traveler.
was
Yeah,
kind
the
of
foreign traveler didn't
curtailed.
was unable to come in. But you know what happened? We saw like 150% increase in our number of domestic tours taken. And when I say domestic, I mean from California alone, like people that lived in the Bay that were having friends and family coming in from prohibition states and were like, look at this cool thing you can do in my home city, you know? And so that's where we started really taking off in the last 2 years, growing the domestic California tourism market in cannabis tours.
Oh, that's great. So what is the experience like if somebody were to go to your website, buy a tour, they fly out, what happens? And by the way, would you please tell people your website? I just realized that we have neglected to do so.
Yeah, no, Emerald Farm Tours. It's emeraldfarmtours.com, singular farm, multiple tours. Um, but we do visit a lot of farms throughout the entire Emerald Triangle. The experience of purchasing a tour, the experience of going through the website, I think is a good one. We work with the ticketing platform that does a lot of the emails back and forth, reminds you that your tour is coming up, just in case you have a stoner moment. So the experience of actually purchasing the tour is pretty smooth. When you join up with us on the tour, depending on what product you purchased, a private product where it's just you and your friends and family, or if you're just on a regular tour, what we're doing is basically picking you up at a location, either your hotel or a designated pickup point, and we're taking you up to 2 hours, just about 2 hours north of San Francisco. We go over the Golden Gate Bridge. We take a beautiful scenic ride through Marin and Sonoma County, make a couple stops for smokes along the way. And by the time 2 hours is rolled past, you're in lovely Anderson Valley, California, which is the southernmost point, really in
The
Mendocino
triangle.
County. Yeah, in Mendocino County. So you go right through the heart of wine country, and you end up in southern Mendo. And we take you to a lovely winery, and we take you to a tasting experience. We have a little bit of a picnic lunch with you guys, and then we take you up onto the farm, and then it's no holds bar. I mean, you're in Mendocino, you get smoked the whole time on the tour when you're up in Mendo, and that's super cool. But then we'll take you up onto the farm. You'll spend a good hour and a half talking to the farmers, talking to the employees, talking to the trimmers, learning how to trim if it's that time of year. You'll spend time taking photos amongst the plants. People love just getting into a forest of weed and just like holding their camera up and taking that amazing
Or
shot. I mean, that's really, to me, I get really excited, Todd. Like, I know it sounds really lame, but like my moment of victory is when people get emotional over those plants. And I know that I've done my job, right? People will get in those plants and they just start welling up. They're like, I never thought I'd be here right now doing this amongst these plants. This means so much to me. And they just break down crying. I mean, I've had those experiences.
dude, it's fucked up. The guy that bailed me out of jail in 1997 when he first came to my home and he was walking through my garden, which was packed with plants, he kind of fell a little behind. And when I turned around and I said, "What's up?" he was kind of teared up. And I said, "Are you okay? What's going on?" He goes, "Yeah, I just realized what I really wanted most in life." And I looked at him, I said, "What's that?" And he looked at me and he had a cannabis leaf in his hand. He looked at me, he just said, "Freedom." And I was just like, whoa. And ironically, a few months later, I'd be busted and he'd be posting my bond. So I get the emotional feeling of
Yeah.
being oppressed for so long and walking into these farms and seeing these fields and plants growing. somewhat in the wild, so to speak, it's a completely different vibe. And I think people do get really, emotionally attached to the cannabis because it helps them so much. And then to be there and feel it and see it, it's a realization on a lot of levels for people, I think.
And going back to that, that contrarian statement that was, said to me, you're not the one to tell this story. I always say nowadays, it's like, yeah, I'm not the one who's going to tell the story. Y'all are going to tell the story. Like when I get there and just showing up on the farm and just, it's an immersive experience. We're providing people 8 hours look into a world where there's nothing like this in the world. Like there's nothing like hill life in the Emerald Triangle. I can tell you that much. And
It's definitely unique, and I've gone to a lot of places that cultivate cannabis, and it is a different kind of world. I mean, my friend Kenny and I used to always joke that the Emerald Triangle was not a great place environmentally to grow cannabis because cannabis is semi-tropical, but it was a great place to hide and
yeah,
grow cannabis, and that's really the purpose it served for a long time. There was a
yeah.
lot of privacy up in them hills and amongst those trees. Until Google Maps, I'm sure, was devastating to most
Isn't
people.
that crazy, Todd? That's insane. You can go anywhere on Google Maps and just find grows, just like, spot a grow.
Yeah, for sure. I've been able to count my plants using Google Maps in the past, so I was just like, Jesus. But
Jeez.
but these are the changes, and now in California, it's legal for all adults to grow cannabis, and this whole situation is, I think, becoming a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are recognizing one of the interesting factoids. One of the interesting factoids I would always be interested to realize when I was throwing my tours together was that um, the folks that would come out and visit, the ones that would book the full Monty tour, like full day visit, they wanted to do multiple tours. Um, it's amazing, like those people have so much love for the plant and almost in a way that makes me fortunate enough to see that level of happiness and joy that it never lets me get jaded about what I do.
No, there's a newness to it every time, and I think you're in a beautiful place because you get to see that moment, that childlike awe that a lot of people have for the first time, and I think it inadvertently reminds you of why you love it so
Yeah,
much too,
totally.
because there's no mistake in that feeling. I mean, this is where I think cannabis plays a significantly different role in compared to anything else because of how it makes us feel internally, how it's calmed us, how it's made bad days good and sad days happier. And this relationship we have with cannabis is so incredibly personal for everybody who uses it. And I believe that these tours also offer people an opportunity to be inspired. The first time I went to Amsterdam, the Cannabis Castle was opened up, and I was allowed to go on the very first Cannabis Castle tour where they debuted the Jack Herer variety, and they showed us the basement, and it was an experience I never forgot. It made me want to go home and get a big house and build a grow in the basement.
Right,
And I
totally.
think
I
a lot
feel
of people that are coming through your tours are also going home and wanting to experience what they saw and implement it in their own home state now
Yeah.
that their own home states are legal.
And then the other thing too is to that point, Todd, is that I notice a big jump in bookings from regions and states and parts of the world where they're just on the cusp of legalization of some sort, or decriminalization of some sort, because the pent up anxiety of prohibition gets so kind of reversed in this really aggressive way, and people start getting so excited about the possibilities of cannabis in their
Right.
legal cannabis in their locale that they
Right.
come out and they explore and they learn and they try to figure out, like, hey, how can I stand this up where I'm at, and how can
Absolutely.
I, yeah, and it's really kind of a part. I'm one part educator, one part entertainer, and one part, tour guide. It's very interesting.
Well, you're also a bit of a historian too, because you're teaching the history that isn't that old up in those hills in all reality. I mean, I first started growing cannabis in Mendocino in 1994, the summer of 94, and there was not a lot of us up there. It was a very different world. Now it's incredibly populated. Ever since we passed 215 in 1996, there was a massive movement for people to move up there and find their privacy and grow some cannabis and become part of it. And a majority of the industry that's up there now has only been up there for the last 25 years,
Right.
realistically,
Right.
but there are some people that have been up there going back even longer, but they're very few of them.
And there's exactly. And you know what? A lot of times those the folks that have been there the longest are the ones that are still there and are the ones that survive and are the ones that over time will prevail. Because I
Well,
think
there's those of us that do it for the love of it and not for the money. And
yeah,
and the reality is that is the difference between the people that are in it long term and the people that are just in it for a little while. Because for the people that are in it for a little while, if that cash doesn't work out for them, they got to find a new hustle. And for the people that really just love cannabis and really will be growing cannabis until the day they die, no doubt. They're going to be there no matter what happens. We were there through raids. I've been between the greenhouse and the house with an armful of cut flowers when I heard a helicopter come over the hill, and it's the worst fucking feeling. Like, there's the worst feeling, and I had to run uphill with arms full of cannabis to try to get in the house before the helicopter made fucking sight of me. And it was just like, they were horrible days. And now I think that this is all changing, and it's like opening up, and these farms that are opening up and allowing outsiders to see how they do and how they produce, to me, are serving a great purpose to the community, because people will go home and they will implement the things that they see. We learn with our
no,
eyes, and this is a great way to learn.
that is a total, it's really interesting what people glean from my tours because going off of that, people do take this information back home. And occasionally I'll get one of my guests, and I pour my heart into my tours. I let, my guests will text me, like a year or 2 years later, like, hey man, how's it going? Got these plants in the backyard. Hey, do they look good? What do you think? And I'll be over there, Sunday morning politicking,
It's really cool.
about my plants to some former guests. And you know what, Todd? They learn the culture, and by kind of being immersed in that, what I've already termed as hill life, um,
Right.
that to them means a lot for some people, right? To some people that, just getting that like buddy inside look, the farmer's with you, you're looking over the farmer's plants, that moment of glory for them is what lives on. And so
Oh,
they
it's great. They're really proud of
yeah,
what they're able to show to people. And also it shows the integrity. A lot of these organic farmers are doing a lot to try to maintain clean production. And they
totally.
should be celebrated for it every
Totally.
day, really. I mean,
And people, and for the farmers out there listening, one of the questions farmers ask me, the top two questions farmers ask me, okay, your top two questions farmers ask Victor, who does cannabis stores. First question is, how are you going to keep bugs off my plants?
what do you tell them? This is
I don't go to
interesting.
more than one farm a day. That's my mitigation strategy. But look, that's the
No,
best I
that's
can do.
actually great, because you're not
Yeah,
cross-contaminating other people's places, and it
I'm
really
not
will
bringing.
cut
Yeah,
that.
I'm not bringing some other guy's pests onto your farm. Period. The other way
I
the
think
other
that's
question
great.
I get is, how are you going to keep people from coming back to rob me? And my answer is always a hardline one. I'm like, look, you went through a process with the city, locals, government, and state to prepare yourself for a legal permit, and you had to prove your security plan to all those entities. That security plan should be good enough to prevent that.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, even if you don't give tours, people are in a precarious place. I mean, the
Totally.
Bureau of Cannabis Control published the addresses of all the production facilities initially, and
Right.
basically doxed everybody who had signed up for a cannabis permit and thought that was just groovy initially. And I think they have since corrected that,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a nightmare, when you think about the danger they put people in, because there are a lot of people that would rather just steal than do the hard work themselves.
And
So,
I'm going to tell you something else. Look, this is no guarantee made across cannabis tourism, but this is what I've seen. The people who take my tours are interested in a happy, fun tourism experience where they get closer to the plant. I to this day have not seen as
Be
cynical.
blunt, bro.
Yeah,
I don't think people are going to use a credit card to sign
totally,
up for a cannabis tour, show up, be filmed, be on video, have their photos taken because they're casing a place.
totally.
It's not the
It's
same
not the
crowd
same.
in
It's
all
not the same
reality.
crowd. Yeah, totally.
So I don't think that the people have anything to worry about in all reality. But I think security is a big part of the whole thing. But I don't think
Integrated
that the
pest
people
management
coming
is
on
super
tours.
important. Like we take IPM and pest management, like we take that because look, I come from a background of working in retail with cannabis. I
Right.
come from a background, I've worked in, I've worked for, mass producers, mass cultivators in their marketing, and that's super important to them. Like that is
Oh,
their number one fear enemy, that is it, is pests and things ruining their gardens environment. So we take that, and we have taken that extremely seriously from the very beginning. And I think that earns a lot of street cred with those farmers from, with
no,
us.
I think that's great. I mean, contamination is number one reason why I've always told people don't let your friends into your grow.
Right.
That's been the easiest way to keep bugs out is keep everybody out because
Yeah,
they come in on their clothing. And
absolutely.
people don't even realize it. It's really kind of fucked up. But I think taking these things into account and taking in tourists that have come from a clean hotel, wearing clean clothes, going to a garden and not going to anyone else's garden.
Right.
If anything, they might leave with bugs, but they won't come with bugs. So and I
And
think the
everybody's
one
doing a foot bath. I mean, for the most part, everybody's making us dip our feet before we get on property. Like, there's all kinds of protections you can put in place with just a little bit of water and bleach.
right. And I think that not going to multiple gardens is the number one way of really keeping it in a good, clean space.
Totally.
So how long does it last? So do you go up there, you have a 2-hour drive north, you spend a couple hours at the garden and a couple hours driving back?
No, we actually do a full 8 to 9 hour day. So we're really spending 2 hours up, 4 hours there, and then two hours back. We spend a good bit of the day in Mendocino County. And
Wow.
that is we're 4 to 5 hours throughout the county, up and down the valley, right up and down Anderson Valley. And you really get to meet some of the local folks. Like you really get to you'll pop into the Bohemian Chemist on the way out of town, and the dispensary folks will kind of talk your ear off and ask you how the farm was. And everybody's really
Really
willing.
cool.
Everybody's got that warm Mendo love. Everybody's got that warm willingness to talk and meet you. And the tourists love it, because the tourists love engaging with the local farmers, the local people who brought that space up.
Right.
I think it's super part of that experience that I'm able to bring folks is getting those interactions together. So making sure that they meet the farmer, making sure they meet the master growers and the folks that are trimming and the producers, and making sure that they meet the property owners who grow the wine and grow the weed and that run the tasting room. I mean, these are all family people who all work together on one property to grow weed, wine, and allow us in for their tours. It's
That's
really a
awesome.
magical experience.
Yeah, country living in Northern California was always really, really cool to me. The people up there were incredible. When I first was up there in '94, you would go hiking and it would rain a lot more than it does now, and people would like roll up your windows and stuff. It was just a crazy different kind of friendly vibe, and I really liked it. I really, really loved it. And
Yeah.
California to me is a very special place when it comes to the cannabis community that's existed here for so long.
It's very convivial. I mean, some call it incestual, but I call it convivial. I think it's a very small community that everybody really knows each other well. And so it's super important not to fuck anybody over, pardon my French.
Right. No, you're right. Trust is the number
Trust
one
is key. It's still a
credit
business
here.
built on trust. It's on a handshake, man.
So do you also do tours of the cannabis clubs in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, look, we do a lot. We've tried a lot over the years. Some of the things I do really ad hoc, and for customers that come back, I do like really special things. But typically, we have a couple of different tours. We have a city weed and wine tour, which typically takes the form of I meet with the customers and like, do you guys want to taste weed, wine, or both? And they're usually like, fuck the wine. Let's go straight for the weed. And so like I end up taking them to 2 or 3, lounges, and I'll walk them in. I'll be the bud tender because I have great relationships with these, retailers, right? I walk in, I can sell more weed than they can, hands down.
Well, you've got a different audience. You
It's
have
a
an audience
different,
that is ready to purchase and they're enthusiastic about your suggestions.
yeah.
Most
And
of
I've
the people
also
that
I've
walking
also
off the
learned about
street,
them. I've also learned a little bit about them on the way. I
yeah.
know how they consume. I know they've earned my trust. I've earned their trust. And so I walk into the dispensary and I help them make better decisions over their purchases than it's a win for the dispensary, funny enough, but it's a super win for the consumer because now there's a million products on the shelves. You could buy it, but now you've got the guy who's tried almost every last one of them telling you what's good and what's not.
No, unfortunately, in California, you're shopping by a package, and you're not able to see it, smell it. You have to make the purchase before you realize you didn't like it or you liked it.
Yeah.
So it's much better to have somebody there, being able to give you suggestions than it is to just blow a bunch of money and
And for a
realize
lot
that
of people, it's a new
you didn't like the
experience,
stuff.
Todd. For a lot of people walking into a dispensary is foreign, right?
Oh, dude, no doubt. Remember, you and I years ago went into one in San Francisco. We won't say the name, but I purchased some Jack Herer they had on the menu. And I think that you and I walked into the dispensary in February and it was packaged sometime in June or July of the
Yeah.
previous year,
Yeah.
and I was just
Oh,
like, wow,
yeah.
what a shitty
So
experience
being
for
able to
people.
point that out to customers really makes them happy because again, they don't know. They're coming
Oh,
for
avoiding a
prohibition
bad
weed.
purchase?
Yeah. Especially when the weed's
Absolutely.
so expensive in California.
No question about it. So can people buy direct from the farms when they're on the tours? I guess that would be
Unfortunately, unless the farmer's set up with a delivery service,
the answer is no.
we still kind of exit through the local gift shop, if you know what I mean. We still go through a local partner dispensary.
Yep.
And
No, I understand. It has
yeah,
to work on that way. You
yeah,
can't just buy cases of liquor from the winery if they're not set
totally,
up to sell them.
totally,
I totally
totally.
get it.
Yeah,
Look, I mean, they're not shooting our dogs. They're not locking us up. We're not having to bail out of jail or go hire a lawyer and go to court. So I'm okay with the little rules, to be
yeah,
blunt. I
I'm good
think
with it.
that, trying to comply is really wonderful, if you're able to do so. And
And
it's
it really does benefit. Like I've always talked a lot about how this business model of cannabis tourism, not just my company, but all the partner companies out there, all the competing companies out there. This model of cannabis tourism only serves to help the small farmer, the products, the brands, the small brand. If you need another channel to distribute and market your product, look no further than the tourists that come into your state to the tune of like 3, 4, 5 billion dollars a year into California. It's crazy the numbers that California sees in tourism just coming into like do California stuff, not even for cannabis tourism. And so there's a symbiotic relationship between our company and the retailers and the brands and the customer that ends up working out in everyone's favor. It's kind of an all, raising the tides to lift all boats scenario.
totally true. Prior to COVID, California was seeing over 250 million visitors a year, which is pretty incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, Canada, on the other hand, about 20 million visitors a year, a little less. And 80% of those are from the United States. So I don't think countries like Canada would benefit from, cannabis tourism as much as places like California. And I'm hoping that more places will build resorts and start catering to the cannabis demographic and not just ignoring us, because that's really where you'll see a lot more advancement in the culture, being able to, have smoking or vaping lounges at, better resorts would be nice. Being able to be inclusive in things that already exist would be nice. But I think that that's what is going to happen with what, you're doing by normalizing this and by showing that, hey, there's a real opportunity here for California to embrace this rather than do what Amsterdam did, which was basically wag their finger at us like
Yeah.
we were negative and call us drug tourism, and without realizing that we were nonviolent, we were bringing
Yeah.
money, we were going to the museums, we were just as good of a tourist as any other tourist they could get. It's
Yeah.
just that we were spending time in coffee shops and not just at, local pubs.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really where this is at. And I think as California embraces companies like you and more companies all over the state start to warm up to this being a potential to actually bridge to their customers and to be more open with their production, I think that this is going to expand. Are there tours like this in Southern California? Are people doing this anywhere other than here?
I'm glad you asked, Todd.
Oh, well, sir, let us know.
Emerald Farm Tours is launching this summer in Los Angeles, San Diego, and Santa Barbara.
Well, that's really cool, man.
Look for information on the website at emeraldfarmtours.com.
I think that's great.
Yeah, no, we saw the opportunity down there, Todd. I mean, look, LA is the untapped. I don't understand how there aren't tours going on down there. There's like a million fucking grows down there. Like there should be somebody driving you to every one of them.
There's also, doing the tours of the cannabis spots, especially some of the spots that allow for on-site consumption. Now that those are starting to open up in places like West Hollywood, I think will make this a lot of fun, because
Yeah,
that coffee shop experience of being able to go and make friends and meet strangers and
totally.
just it was fucking incredible. And I just think that that's something that more people need to experience. And
I mean, some of the best times in my life were Amsterdam hostels, that whole lifestyle of just like bouncing around from the gray area to the Bulldog to this, and just like meeting all the people that you knew were there for the same reason you were,
That was beautiful, man. It's a great experience. I mean, in my opinion, that really inspired so many people to go home and push harder and be activists and try to, fight for that freedom. Because once you experienced there was no going back from it. Once you experienced what it felt like to walk into a coffee shop and order a couple grams of grass and ash and sit
Freedom.
down, man, it was so great. One of the coolest experiences I had with change and cannabis was at Hitman Glass, Dougie's Chalice event. It was his second event. He had to hold it in San Bernardino, Victorville area. And it was the first time those sheriffs had ever policed, with the good graces of the city council, a cannabis event.
Right.
And they had a hands-off approach. And those cops were hanging out with the glass growers. They were like really inquisitive and they were really nice. And at the end of it, because I was hanging around with Dougie, who owned the event, and the cops were around, they were saying things like, we've done Oktoberfest, beer fests, and never have we had a crowd this big that was completely peaceful.
Yeah.
And, this is completely different to us. And they were having their minds blown. There was photos of San Bernardino cops like holding glass and trying to figure out how to blow glass and stuff. And I realized that day that if they really could experience what we were really like in a crowd, or what the demographic really was like, even in private establishments like coffee shops or on tours and stuff, they would see us and, us being the cannabis community in such a different light.
And tourism changes hearts and minds, right? It does that for everybody. Like they've all, like, is it Rick Steves, our good friend Rick Steves, right? PBS travel writer extraordinaire. He's, you haven't lived unless you've traveled, right? You have nothing to compare your life to until you've seen how as someone else lives and be able to live in their shoes. So I think generally speaking, on the macro level, I think all of us need to do a lot more traveling, a lot more tourism. I know it's expensive and shit's getting real out there, but
I think what your point is clear. We should live our lives in a way that we're benefiting from our work and not just working so that we could barely live our lives. And I think that being able to see the planet, life is short. This is the beauty of it. When I lived in Europe, all of my friends, really, they were holiday to holiday planners, because all they ever were talking about is where they went last and where they were going next, because they wanted to see the world before they died. And I think that providing this kind of culture opportunity to people really serves the community well. And I'm grateful you're doing it.
Well, thanks, Todd. I appreciate it, man. Look, we do this for the love. You and I have been at this a long time, relative to a lot of the folks who are out there who haven't been at it a long time. And we have some of our own deep stories and experiences. And I think that a lot of that legacy and a lot of that tradition has to live on somehow. And I think through the told narrative of what you're doing here with this show and what I'm doing with Emerald Farm Tours, I think those narratives and those stories and those lessons live on.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is, what I'm trying to do here with this is to kind of give the community a insight into the people I know and to the good things that are going on. It's the same thing I'm trying to do with the genetics. Is for the longest time I was trying to instigate people to read about and learn about cannabis, and now we're at a place where you can actually put those seeds in their hand and let them go back and experience what it's like to grow it and to consume it on their own. And I think this is the evolution of us having a better understanding of the plant and the human relationship with it.
Totally. And I think, I'd also like to mention that I think it's important that we start to, and it's sad that I have to say it this way, but we have to start to deregulate a little bit of what's happened in the overregulation process of, particularly, I know we're talking about taxation in cannabis a lot right now, but I think we also have to talk about simplifying the line between A to purchase or A to retail, right? Production to retail. I think a lot of times we get ourselves carried away with over-regulating things, and it happened in the cannabis tourism world already. This is just the beginning of cannabis tourism. We already can't smoke on our buses, on our state regulated buses. You can drink as much alcohol as you want on a bus that's got its license. Smoke cannabis, even if the compartment of the driver is separate. So that had been changed by our governor through executive order and executive action. And I think that it's doing a disservice to a lot of the industry, and it's doing a disservice to people who want to safely consume cannabis and eat. And I think we're doing a disservice to everybody who voted to legalize cannabis, because we are doing that disservice in the name of protecting what? Protecting who? Just the people who can drink alcohol, or not? Or are we going to protect everybody equally here? So,
Well, I think the hypocrisy is what I have the biggest problem with. If you're going to allow the alcohol consumption, then, there's no reason not to allow the cannabis consumption, because it's not like the driver's going to get a secondhand buzz, especially if the compartments are separated. So it is utterly ridiculous. But I think that, the normalization of what you're doing is only going to cause them to see the folly in how they viewed their stringent policies.
and I'll
Because
tell you one step further, Todd. One step further. There are, even within our own Emerald Triangle, on a very micro level, why does Emerald Farm Tours predominantly do business in Mendocino? Well, it's because Mendocino didn't rush like Humboldt did to overregulate cannabis tourism before cannabis tourism was even a thing.
Oh,
So,
really?
oh yeah, let me tell you a little story. Have a seat, everybody. Uncle Vic's going to tell you a story about Humboldt County versus Mendocino County and how things played out. So in Mendocino County, they were just super laissez-faire about it. They were like, all right, let's sit back and see how this goes. I was up in those county offices. They asked me for one thing, Todd. Please pay the $31, $32 business tax license for operating in Mendocino County. And I said, to whom do I make the check out? Right? Like,
Sure.
when you talk about what happened in Humboldt County, it was a much different experience. It was a much different. Humboldt County I had launched my first tour on a Friday afternoon. This was 4 or 5 years ago already, 4 years ago, probably. I launched what was going to be an overnight tour into Humboldt County for the weekend. We launched on Friday at 3 p.m. At 4:30, like, we got a call from the county of, we got a call from Eureka, the county of Humboldt. And they were like, hey, we saw you're doing tours in Humboldt County. Why don't you go ahead and come on by on Monday afternoon? We'll set up a meeting for us to talk. Okay, so let's set up a meeting to go. So I go up there. I come into the log into their their check-in, and the young woman behind the counter asks me for some crazy fee, like I think it was like 80 or $120, something crazy, to take a meeting with the county that they requested. So that was like step one. I was already wary of what the hell was about to go down. I got charged to go to my own, my own hanging, right? So so I went in I went into the office with the gentleman, and he started to throw out crazy like permit fee numbers that were like, okay, so here are all the hoops you have to jump through to do the business, which included things like measuring road lengths and distances, ensuring there are proper turnouts for my bus. Basically, I had to do the work of the county, like the work the county should have done to regulate their process. They were asking me for a retainer of like 10 grand to basically begin the permitting process for achieving this licensure with the county of Humboldt. I was just like, what is going on here? Like, I'm just trying to bring a bus full of people up to a farm, right? So this is the direction that things can take.
What was their response when you told them the same process cost $38 or whatever in Mendocino?
Oh, they don't want to hear it. This is not Mendocino.
Interesting.
This is
Okay.
So then they had me run the gamut of talking to all the supervisors. So I mean, dude, I'm not even going to get into the details of this. This was worthy of a fireside chat one day.
So in short, we don't do tours of Humboldt County.
I mean, typically I send my tours to my colleague up there who was the only one to get through that process, So
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was crazy.
Was there anybody doing tours before you started this? I really don't remember anybody doing this.
Well, okay, so like there was cannabis tours as done by April Black. April was doing tours back in the High Times Cannabis Cup days. She was aggregating tourism. She was a tour operator for High Times, and she was doing cannabis, but really before,
it was more to come out to the Cannabis Cup, though. It was facilitating a visit to the Cannabis Cup.
And she was going to Jamaica too. She was doing doing
cool places.
Yeah. What I did here in the Bay first was just setting up like weekly tours that ran into farms and grows on a weekly basis. And nobody really had been able to do that. And still today, a lot of my competitors, not all, but a lot of my competitors that do cannabis tours in San Francisco have no plant touching or grow component to them whatsoever.
They just bring you to coffee shops.
They just bring you to the dispensary, lounges, and then take you around the city on a tour of the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's great. There's something for everyone there, but that's not who we are at Emerald Farm Tours.
Are many of these cannabis places in San Francisco allowing on-site consumption?
So I believe right now, don't quote me on this, but there are 12 dispensary lounges that allow on-site consumption in San Francisco. I think that's the number. There are more dispensaries than that, but there are 12 that are approved for lounge life.
Do you give tours of those 12?
Oh yeah. I mean, we end there at our tours. Like a lot of the times, like when people want a city tour and they want to go see a grow, I'll still take them back to one of those lounges, and I'll leave them there because usually they just want to stay there, and then I'm cut loose.
Fantastic, man. I mean, the fact that you allow customers to customize the experience that they're looking to get is, I think, really, really cool. And I hope this continues and really grows for you. I hope that the expansion into Southern California is wonderful. Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, San Diego. I've lived in all three cities. I love them. Southern California is a great place. Yeah. There's a lot of cannabis energy down there. There's a lot of cultivation. There's great retail. There's a lot to see. So I think that would be really, really cool.
I appreciate that, Todd. And thank you for having me on today, man. This has been great.
Yeah, it was quick. We went for almost 45 minutes right now, really fast. Yeah. I think what you're doing is wonderful. And I think, this is more people understand how things are changing out here, the more they'll be inspired to help them change where they are. And I think that's the key to the success of the community growing. It's inspiring one another and educating one another. Because obviously that's how I know everything I know about cannabis. It's not like I was able to go to school or go to college and become a cannabis expert. I had to read books, and I had to, meet people like Jack and Rob Clark and Lester Grinspoon and Dr. McCormick and people that went on to be some of my best teachers. So
and you know what? It's great. I mean, look, you started a lot. You're a little bit older than I am, but 2002. I was volunteering all of my free time at NORML on K Street in Washington, D.C. I learned, I was fortunate. I was really fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be an activist, start my life in cannabis really on the East Coast. But as an activist, I quickly made my way to the West Coast and found the light in cannabis and found the healthcare benefits of it too, because that's
Yeah.
exactly why I sought it out in the first place. So it was really great to really have that trajectory and kind of be where I'm at today. I think I look back on that the last 22 years of my life and I say, look, I've dedicated it to this plant. Now it's time to, you know, showcase what I know, prepare the next generation for what's to come.
That's great. It's funny, 2002, I was calling into the NORML office on K Street Collect from prison so I could talk to Keith, who was being
Yeah,
a support
yeah, yeah,
mechanism
yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
me throughout
yeah,
that whole
yeah.
experience.
So we had our connection.
Yeah, normal was great. I mean, I feel that they were in a difficult situation, but they did a lot of good work in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I'm grateful that they were around, and I'm
I just
grateful
gotta
for the work
say,
they did.
grateful for them for always being putting the cannabis consumer first. And I can really truly say the cannabis consumer was represented there, even in the earliest days. I mean, for crying out loud, they had an 800 number you could just call in and ramble into. I mean, like get all
Well, in
hot,
all reality,
and then I'd pick up
I
and be
was
like, "Hi."
I was good friends with Keith for a long time, and the focus of it was the end consumer. It wasn't so much hemp in the industry or the environment. It wasn't medical cannabis. It
Yeah,
was that there was a civil rights and issue here, and this is something that should have been acknowledged. And I think Keith was right on the bigger picture, though. I think that we now understand cannabis a lot more than we knew collectively about cannabis when
right,
NORML was founded in
right,
1970.
right.
And when you think about the fact that it was basically a group of lawyers that were trying to figure out, I guess, how they could assist people who were being harassed through prohibition. It is what it is. I mean, I'm grateful for it, but I'm grateful that there were people that broke away and that really pursued, like SSDP, obviously,
One of
and
mine, yeah,
and
super
that
all the
pursued
time, yeah.
initiatives and changes that became more permanent, like what we're experiencing now in the state of California. And believe how many states have legalized now? Like 34 have medical. Do you know what the numbers are nationwide?
I do not at the time because everything's changing so much faster than it used to, Todd.
It's huge. I
It's like
totally
the
agree.
time is sped up. It's like the exponential growth curve of cannabis legalization.
I think it is. I think you're absolutely right. I think the snowball is going down the hill and it's only getting bigger and faster as it grows, and collects more, and it's not going to slow down. I mean, everybody has an endocannabinoid system, and I totally joke that every cop, prosecutor, judge, and jailer who's ever locked me up for cannabis, and there have been a lot of them, they all have an ECS, and their bodies are making the same chemicals cannabis is
Totally,
making every day to get them through their day. And
totally.
someday when they wake up to that, maybe they'll stop, busting their neighbors and brothers and sisters for freaking smoking pot or growing a plant. But one can only be hopeful.
Stop snitching, folks.
Uh, well, and it's more than stop snitching. It's stop the lack of realization that we have an endocannabinoid system and that our
Yeah,
body makes these on-demand chemicals that actually get us through our day. I mean, once you realize that we all have an ECS, then the idea of prohibiting the one plant that can balance out our ECS seems criminal. And it's not just preposterous, it's fucking criminal. And realistically, the people that are oppressing the cannabis community and keeping it down are really the people who are breaking the laws of nature, because they're really causing the cancers, the problems that could be easily alleviated through the use of cannabis,
right,
because they're prohibiting the very plant that actually is
right.
most nutritious and has the chemicals we need. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
tours everywhere. I hope you have tours in all 50 states someday,
I hope
and I
so
hope
too,
that
Todd.
there's pot growing everywhere, man. That's a true story, though, hey.
True story, true story.
All
So,
right. Well, hey, man. Well, thanks for talking to me today. Um, and let's do this again sometime.
anytime you want, my friend, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace and love. See you over here, man.
Bye.
All right. Bye.